Welcome to another episode of the Business Leaders Coach, where we educate, enable, equip, and empower leaders to be the best version of themselves. My name is Toyo Shimbi, founder of Business Leaders Coach, and I'm your host today. I'm going to be sharing with you how to grow your character and your competence in just 15 minutes a day. Now, if you are watching this on YouTube, please don't forget to subscribe. And if you are listening to this on podcast, please like and share as well. Now, I want you to imagine that you've got a very important decision to make. You are with your GP, and your GP has just mentioned to you that you need to have surgery. And he's going to recommend two doctors, Dr. A and Dr. B. And it's just going to give you some insight so that you can make a wise choice. Now, Dr. A comes as a trustworthy doctor with an impeccable character. What he says is what he does. When it comes to executing on this aspect of the surgery, he doesn't have so much experience. And then you have Dr. B. Now, Dr. B comes as the most experienced in this field. He has a 99% success rate in dealing with this situation. But at the same time, your GP says, I need to let you know, though, that if you Google his name right now, you're going to find all over the internet the scandal about him cheating on his wife for several years. And this is well known in the entire hospital. So as your GP, I just wanted to let you know, for just in case, so that you are informed before you make this decision. What are you going to do? What is the real issue here? Dr. A is a person of character, but not necessarily competent in this area of surgery, while Dr. B is not perhaps really a person that you might say is trustworthy, but is competent at what he does. So if you go with Dr. A, he will tell you at the end of the operation, he'll tell you the truth about how it went, whether it was successful or not. But if you go with Dr. B, most likely he will tell you that it went well, even if it didn't. Can you see the dilemma? This raises a very interesting question around character versus competence. And at the end of the day, I'm sure many of you will be saying, I just want both of them in the room so that I can get the best of the best. Anyway, in this short podcast, I'm going to show you how leaders need to focus on both. Even though we might say one is easier to learn than the other, at the end of the day, we need leaders that are both character-led as well as competent in what they do. Now, in the book by Jim Loehr, I'm going to just take a few ideas. In his book, Leading with Character, Jim gives us some simple processes around how we can develop our character every day in 10 minutes just by doing an exercise and making that exercise a habit. That's what I'm going to be sharing with you. And also, I'm going to be sharing with you about how you can also develop your competence as well. But first, we must be aware that character falls into two categories. And this is what Jim Loehr and his research pulls out, which is that we have what's called performance character qualities. And these actually drive what we achieve. Examples would be resilience, being disciplined, being courageous, being ambitious, being confident. All these kind of character qualities or principles, as you can see, they are what's called performance-led. Now, the interesting thing is that sometimes we find organizations that are led by leaders that only place high value on these type of character traits or character principles. And what you'll find over time is that these organizations will have a lot of people issues as they grow or as they scale, because there's another side to character qualities called the moral character qualities. And these drive the how we achieve it, the how we achieve the results. Examples would be moral integrity, honesty, kindness, for instance, trustworthiness, empathy, humility, and so on. And so when an organization chooses its core values, it will be wise to have a combination of both these type of character qualities, performance character qualities and moral character qualities. And sometimes they use the same words. Sometimes we do have organizations that have said integrity is important, and that hasn't happened. So just because you chose them doesn't mean that you're going to follow through on them. And I think that's more important. But it has to start off with us individuals. So the question is, how can you develop your character qualities? Well, you're going to need to become more self-aware. That's the first thing. And you do that by first getting a clear understanding of what the character quality is. And then you can rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5 by asking yourself, how do I do in this area? You increase your awareness just by simply asking this question. A good example from history is Benjamin Franklin, who did exactly that. He chose 13 virtues and focused on one each week. And he focused on these 13 virtues, one every week, which actually covers a quarter, and he just rotated it throughout the year. And so my recommendation, something that I always tell my clients, is get a journal and ask yourself a set of reflective questions around each character quality. For instance, if you're thinking about becoming more kind, or even just becoming more aware around, am I really a kind person? You can ask yourself, how have I done with showing kindness today? It could be at the end of the day. It could be first thing in the morning. You could reflect on the day before. And then if this is an area of focus, you can then ask yourself, what can I do tomorrow? Or what can I do today to show more kindness? You see, just by asking yourself that question, just by triggering that in your brain, you will see opportunities during the day to show more kindness. When you walk into the room, to greet the person at the desk, to say bye-bye to the receptionist, to just really look for those opportunities. And the thing why I think many leaders, especially once you get into a certain position, is it's actually the moral character qualities that tend to lack. And you need to become more aware about that, about showing empathy with people, because sometimes you just forget about what it's like for people to be in certain situations. So you'll be more aware of the opportunity to show up and demonstrate these character qualities when you ask questions around them. How can I stay focused? How can I be more courageous? 10 minutes in your journal can help you with that. And that's what Jim Loehr is also recommending. In fact, his book comes with another type of journal where there's some questions that you can ask. And that's something that you can do as well to really heighten what your whole philosophy around these character qualities are. But let's now move over to competence. What about competence? How do you increase your skill? As a leader, we know that we need to keep developing our skill. And as the world is moving so fast, this is actually, in fact, there is a leadership crisis. That's just the truth in terms of us being competent at what we do. And so even though we can have character, but knowing how to execute as leaders, as a leader, is absolutely important. In fact, when you coach many leaders, you will find that this is an area of insecurity, imposter syndrome. I've been given the title. I now have the position, but I know I don't really know what I'm doing. Because in many cases, people are promoted into positions and are not trained competently into those positions, and it leaves a gap, of insecurity and imposter syndrome. And if that's something that you want to talk about, definitely I'll be sharing how you can contact Business Leaders Coach, schedule time for us to talk about how we can build your confidence by ensuring that you have the right character qualities and the competence. Now, I've got good news, because in his book, The Leader Habit, Martin Lanik, with his research team, identify 22 leadership skills that every leader needs to master, and you can do this in just minutes. In fact, he calls them the 5-minute leadership skills that you can practice once you've identified the area you need to focus on. Again, following the same pattern, the skills, these 22 skills, they're broken into 2 sections. On one side, you have getting things done, and then on the other is focusing on people. So from a high level on the getting things done, we've got 3 sections. This is how he's divided these skills. It's number 1 is planning and execution, 2 is solving problems and making decisions, and 3 is leading change. Now, this goes into more specific skills such as managing priorities, or planning and organizing work, or creating urgency on and that's on the getting things done. And these are broken into habits. And this is the really interesting thing about this idea, is that we can take, for instance, creating urgency, and what we can do together is pinpoint what would that look like, and really get a sense of practicing this every day. Now, on the focusing on people side, it breaks down into persuasion and influence, growing your people and teams, interpersonal skills. Again, this goes down further into more detail, covering the actual skills. To give you some examples, one would be influencing others, or overcome individual resistance, or mentoring and coaching, or building team spirit. These are skills that every leader needs to have. And many times I get these questions. I can almost anticipate what the typical questions are. How do I motivate and engage my people? How do I have these tough decisions? How do I make these decisions? How do I handle people that are resistant to my ideas? Again, all this are habits about how you can do that, and knowing confidently that if I keep these as habits, if I adopt these habits, 9 times out of 10, I'll get to it. At the end of the day, you can't change other people's behavior. You can only change your own. And that's one of the things that Marshall Goldsmith talks about, which is that the higher you go in leadership, it's more about you changing your behavior. Don't worry about other people changing their behavior, because when you change your behavior, you become an influence for them. So here's the beauty. So how does this work? Okay, now after spending the 10 minutes in your journal writing and answering questions around the character quality that we've talked about, so whether it's the performance character qualities or principles, or whether it's the moral character quality or principles, you can then also spend another 5 minutes simply reflecting on these skills, these leadership skills. So let's take, for instance, building team spirit as an example. A simple thing, right? 5 minutes. You want to build the team spirit in your team. You can ask yourself the question in the first thing in the morning as you're writing in your journal: what can I do in our meeting today that can help us connect all together? Now, it's a simple question, right? And some of you might think, oh, this is such a simple thing. But the problem is, we're not doing it. It's not yet a habit. And what might come out of that? You might say, for instance, simply share right at the beginning of the meeting, get everybody to share a place that they would love to travel to, and then why. And so you start the meeting and you execute on that. That kind of builds a different team spirit. Everybody's getting to know each other. That's just one thing from one thought, from one question that you did first thing in the morning, implemented it with the team, and you're seeing the team spirit being built. Now, if you did this every day and you trained yourself to become more aware in any of these areas that we've mentioned, what kind of leader would you be? Now, if you integrate this into our 5 daily habits, and if you haven't yet got the 5 daily habits handout, go to businessleaderscoach.com. You'll pop up, put your email in, and I'll send that to you, where we highlight 5 essential daily habits for every leader, which is you need time to think, you need time to plan, then you must execute on what you've planned, and then you reflect on it, and then what did I learn from it? You see, you find yourself making progress in your growth daily. So, in conclusion, do you want to grow in both your character and your competence? Well, I've just shown you how you can do this by spending 15 minutes a day. Number 1, spend 10 minutes reflecting on the character principles of focusing and assessing on how you are doing in any of these chosen character qualities. And then number 2, choose the area of competency that you know you need to grow in and proactively focus on this with the habit skills that you can then pinpoint so that you're executing on it every day. Now, the research shows that on average, it takes 66 days to form a habit. Now, this could be misleading because although it says 66 days, it actually depends on what the habit is. In the past, people used to say it takes 21 days. That's not true. And in some situations, it is true because it depends on what the actual activity is. But the main thing that doesn't get spoken about is that in any activity that you want to turn into a habit, it needs to reach automaticity. Now, automaticity is when you're automatically thinking in that way. And that is when something has become a real habit. And this is where having a coach comes in to help support. Now, typically we think that to change a habit, you're going to just start applying it and then it's just going to continue. But that's not true. There's going to be ups and downs, discouraging times. And so only when you have some kind of level of accountability, somebody there to have the conversation and to think through and help you to unpack what are the things that are hindering you, are you able to ensure that this habit sticks. Now, there are many habits that you can do on your own, but what research is showing that having a coach does help you get there faster. And if you want to talk about how maybe Business Leaders Coach can help, go to businessleaderscoach.com and schedule a call, and we can show you how to use our tracking app to pinpoint your behavior, and you will actually see your own progress as well. And we can show you the 50 character qualities that you can choose out of, both the performance and moral character qualities. And then we can also show you the 22 leadership skills to develop. And so, to conclude, if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe so you can get more lessons and podcast messages like this. And if you are listening to this on podcast, again, like and you can share with your friends. Hopefully you found this helpful. For now, this is Toyoshi B for Business Leaders Coach. You can go to businessleaderscoach.com and then you can click on this one and you can see the show notes and any links to the books that I've mentioned. Or if you do want to connect and talk about how we can help you implement these leadership habits, definitely schedule a call for us to talk. But for now, this is Toyoshi B signing off. Take care.